Welcome to In This Moment. I'm Janet Stovall, DEI strategist, joined by organizational culture expert Khalil Smith. We tackle the urgent questions in management and inclusion, exploring what's next and what you can do about it today. We're so glad you're here with us. Let's dive in.
So, Janet, we are back for season 2 of In This Moment, and we are super excited. Obviously, first episode of season 2. We've got incredible things lined up, but I think just first and foremost, we wanted to take some time in this first episode to kind of welcome folks back, talk a little bit about what the season is going to be like, help folks get a bit of an understanding of the flow, because you put a lot of energy and a lot of effort into the flow and the structure and the storyline. And so,
which I'm sure nobody on our team, which will tell you about, gave a damn about as much as I do, but I'm sorry. At the end of the day, I'm still a speechwriter and we do that. So I apologize.
And we love you for that on top of many, many other things. So structure is one of the things that I think is even more in place for season 2. We learned a lot from season 1 and just kind of wanted to kick off and reintroduce ourselves. So welcome back, everyone. For anybody that has not listened before, I'll do a quick intro. My name is Khalil Smith. I'm excited to be joining you from Chapel Hill, North Carolina. I won't get super deep into the resume and the bio, but just know that I've spent a lot of time in the business space and thinking about how businesses operate and how we deliver great experiences for employees all over the world. And I think that that probably could not be more relevant than it is right now. And I am absolutely fortunate to spend time and to share this podcast with my friend and co-host, Janet. Janet, introduce yourself to the people that don't know.
I'm Janet Stovall, and I've spent even more time in this space because I'm older than Khalil, but I've been doing this for a minute, and sort of the same thing that Khalil said. I've worked a lot with a lot of organizations trying to figure out how we deal with change. My focus is very much in the DEI space, and I have a sort of a preference or interest or passion for dealing with the issue of race, but I deal with all aspects of diversity, equity, inclusion because I do believe that all those things are connected. And the difference is, I think that I am, not by choice necessarily, but just by the way it's happened, is I'm a blower up of shit. And that's kind of just what I've done. It's my personality. It is a privilege. It's a privilege to have been able to be in positions where I could be that person who disrupted and did it in a way that didn't get me fired, didn't get anybody killed, but I believe actually moved the conversation forward. So Khalil and I have very different styles, but I think that one of the reasons we get along so well is that we know that all of these styles are necessary. We are all in the business of trying to do the right things and to make the workplace something that everybody can be in, that everybody can contribute to fully. And I think we are in fact, I know we're on the same page about that. Even if we go about it differently, we're on the same page. And that's what we built this podcast to be about. We want to help you and help people who listen to us figure out, how do we navigate this space in a way that makes it better for all of us and better for the organizations that we work for. Did I say that right, Khalil?
You absolutely did. And we're going to talk a little bit about some kind of core beliefs that you helped us articulate as a speechwriter and somebody that swims in words and takes all of these ideas and brings them together. But Janet, one of the things you were talking about is kind of the differences in the way that we operate at times. And there's so much overlap and so many things that you and I both connect on. But one of the things that we were talking about in terms of kind of themes of season 1, things that we learn, and one of the things that I learned is exactly what you're describing. There are people in so many different kind of stages and across different spectrums that are all still hungry for these types of conversations. We heard over and over again from people on social media, from people that would reach out to us on LinkedIn, from people that would, kind of meet us at events or conferences we were going to, that there's ongoing interest and energy for these types of conversations. People want to continue to talk about what's going on. And you and a couple of the folks on the back end so brilliantly talked about this idea of in this moment, because there's always a moment, right? We're always kind of thinking about a particular moment. And we know there's a lot happening right now across a lot of different spaces. And so right now in this moment rings differently. It rings differently in season 2 than it did in season 1, but there's still this energy, this desire to have these conversations, to unlock things, pull them apart, really get at the meat of what's going on and not shy away from the difficult dialogue. And so I'm curious what other things you take away from season 1 or things that you heard from other folks.
Season 1 for me was very much about reaction because, when we started season 1, we were looking around going, "What the hell is going on?" And we heard people saying that to us, and so we did it because that's what we wanted. We were struggling with that. We were asking those questions, and we wanted to help have that conversation. So it was very much about reaction. And so when we started talking about in this moment, we were talking about in this moment as I'm gonna use a term which is kinda hackneyed now of unprecedented, moment. It felt very unprecedented. Now it feels like this is just, business as usual right now. But in this moment, when we started season 1, that's what it was. So we talked about in this moment. Well, in season 2, we are still in this moment. I mean, it's still a little crazy. We still don't know what's going to happen. It still feels unprecedented. You wake up every day and you go like, "What fresh hell is this?" And so you still feel that way. But what we did was in that as we got through season 1 and we started talking to people, and as we started continuing the work that we do outside of this podcast, what we realized is that you're always, as you said, we're always in some moment. And so there's no such thing as unprecedented. Every moment is unprecedented. So season 2 is more about saying, all right, not are we in this moment? Yeah, okay, so we are in this moment. What are we going to do? Because this moment will be another moment in the next moment. So what are we going to think about now going forward? So where season 1 was very much in my mind about reaction, season 2 is much more about proaction with strategy because we have got to get out of our sense of rabbit in the headlights and we don't know what's coming next and say that we don't know what's coming next. But we're kidding ourselves if we've ever believed that we knew what was coming next. We are just doing in this moment what we've always done. The technology has, sped up that process exponentially, but at the end of the day, if you have been in the workplace, if you've been living in the world, you never know what's coming next. We just had the belief that we did. So we're like, let's lean into it in season 2 and let's accept. Bottom line is we don't know in this moment what the next moment is going to be, but we have to, in this moment, make very valid strategic decisions using what we do know to try to plan for the future. Because at the end of the day, that's what has always worked. And so we're just saying now the podcast is going in that direction too.
Yeah, yeah. And Janet, one of the things that you raised is kind of this idea of, what we're doing outside of the podcast. So you and I are both practitioners. We've been in the space for quite some time. We've kind of got the bumps and the bruises and the scars of making this work happen. And I know that for season 2, we wanted to continue to bring other people into this conversation that similarly have, are experts in their field, have done this work, have really leaned in. And first, I want to talk a little bit about this core belief that you helped us articulate. And then I want you to help the people understand the framing for season 2. So the core belief, we believe that the future belongs to organizations that harness the full spectrum of human potential. In an increasingly complex and competitive business landscape, the companies that thrive will be those that unlock the strategic advantage hidden in plain sight, their people. And so all of these elements, right? The future belonging to organizations that harness the full spectrum of human potential, that's something you and I have talked about quite a bit. And I think that, regardless of some of the buzzwords or the things that you're not supposed to say, the kind of challenges that may be going on, any of that, you and I have stayed anchored really throughout our entire careers, and so many others have as well, that people should be at the center of your business. And when you do that, when you make people the center of your workplace, in addition to all the other stuff that needs to go on, right? So you and I have both said this isn't about ignoring revenue. revenue. This isn't about ignoring technology. This isn't about ignoring emerging markets or any of that. But if you're not treating your people well, then you are missing out on the strategic advantage that is hidden in plain sight, your people. And so this idea that successful companies are going to be the ones that truly unlock the potential of their people, this is something you talked about a lot. And that gets a bit into this idea of the framing for how people will see the podcast come together. So would love for you to both react to the core belief. I know you like it because you help put words to it, but also the framing and how should listeners and viewers think about what they're going to see and hear on the upcoming episodes.
Exactly. I tout myself as a diversity pragmatist, and it's really that I'm about objectivity. So let's face it, companies that are going to be successful in the future are the ones that figure out how to truly unlock the potential of their people. At the end of the day, it's that simple. Employees are your biggest asset. I've always said that. I've always said, if you talk about diversity, if we ever truly believed that it was a business asset, we wouldn't be having these conversations. So I'm still a believer in that. But at the end of the day, it's about people. So when we started framing this, and I'll let Khalil describe it because since it was at my house, I can't talk about how it actually went down. But we came up with the idea that the theme of this podcast would be for season 2, what's next and what's now. And I know that sounds backwards to say what's next and what's now, but Khalil, explain a little bit how we landed on this and what this
Well,
context.
there was, we had decided, we knew we were doing a season 2 and we knew we needed to do a photo shoot because, it's not a season unless we do a photo shoot. So I
Exactly.
made the decision to come down and you welcomed me into your amazing home. We were there with Evan, our producer, and you fed us. You broke out some wine and some drinks. You also broke out a dry erase board that you keep in your home so that you can keep the ideas
One of
flowing.
two. Yeah,
One of two, multiple. You need one on every floor, right? At a
exactly.
minimum. And we just again kind of dumped out what are all the things we're hearing, what are we thinking about, what are some of the challenges of the moment, and to your point, Janet, the what's next and what's now really came from this place that each of us were going, which is, well, we can't be overly reactive to what is happening in the news right now, but we also can't ignore what is happening, and so we encourage organizations and individuals, and this will be the frame. It's all of the things that we're asking the guests that we have joining the podcast is to think about where are we going to be 18 months, 24 months from now? And what are the things that we need to be doing now as leaders, as institutions, as companies, as individuals to make sure that our behaviors are coherent, to make sure that the things that we're doing are setting us up for the future, to make sure that we're not just mired in the moment, but are really thinking about where the organization and all of its people are going to be in 2 years, and thinking about how all of those things fit together. And so that frame helps us get out of just being whiplashed by right now, while also recognizing you can't think about 24 months out if you're not also doing the self-care and the investment in your folks today. And so really felt like both of those things anchoring in those two spaces allow us to kind of go back and forth through time with these experts that we're going to be bringing together. But
So
before we go
talk
any
a little bit
further,
about.
Janet, hold on. You fed me some pound cake that you got to put the recipe up on the site or something because it fresh strawberries and it had like sugar on top. I don't even know what was going on,
Well,
but
see, Khalil,
the
Khalil,
podcast takes second to
you
that.
came here from North Carolina, and for those of us who do not know, I grew up in North Carolina, and Evan, our producer's in New York, and he had said he needed Southern food. So my whole deal was we're going to eat North Carolina. So now I will fight you about the barbecue fight. I'm not only from North Carolina, I'm from Eastern North Carolina. Barbecue for us is pulled pork with vinegar sauce. It's not even a sauce because you know what? It doesn't need sauce to be cooked right. So I remember I did pulled pork, I did Brunswick stew, and it was a pound cake. So yeah, that's how we needed that sort of fuel to do this, to keep it real, to get down to it. And so, Khalil, talk a little bit about, and I'll talk about the story arc since I'm the one that beat everybody into that. Talk a little bit about the fact that we're using guests this time. You talked a little bit about that. People were thinking about it. Explain a little bit about how we chose the guests that we did, because we are doing it a little bit differently this time.
Yeah, no, for sure. So last season, with the exception of one brilliant episode with Dr. Ella Washington, it was you and me talking, right? We were going back and forth, pulling things apart, trying to understand it as we're navigating through it. And again, part of the feedback we got is people love the interaction between the two of us. And then we figured out for season two, really what we wanted to do was bring in other insights, bring in other visionaries. And so a couple of the things that we look for that again, you really hammered home and, articulated. One, we wanted these people to be visionary, because if we're asking folks to think out 24 months, you can't have people that can't think out 24 hours, right? These are people that know the industry. They know what's going on. They are thinking out 2 years in the future and trying to figure out, how does all of this go together? Where do I see this going? And again, these are not people that are operating with a sense of absolute confidence, but they're saying, I've been around this. I've seen these things come together. I see where things are headed, and this is where I think we're going. And then similarly, these are people that are change agents. So you said, when we're not doing the podcast, what are the things that we're taking on? These are people that similarly, when they're not on this podcast, they are doing research, they are practitioners, they are leading, they are sitting at a certain level in the organization, because they are true change agents that are driving things forward and being really active about the work being done. And then the third part, I don't think you could get on this podcast and not do this last one, which is not being afraid to say the quiet parts out loud, not being afraid to say the things that maybe could get somebody in a little bit of hot water, or the thing that we're not supposed to say right now. And so again, so many of us have talked about, we've got to be able to lean into that. And so finding visionaries that can see the future, but also change agents that are doing that work today, and then looking across all of that and having them say, you know what? I'm just going to go for it. You know what, Janet? I don't know if I should say this, but I'm going to say it. Please don't edit this part out. And we're like, no, 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 we're not editing any of that stuff out. This is what people are listening for. Those are the three things that we look for in guests. And humbly, I would say we found it. We found incredible, incredible folks, and are continuing to find incredible folks that want to come and tell all of us what they're seeing and what we should be doing.
I agree. And, to be honest, we were fair. We said to our guests, look, we'll give you some idea of, because the process was, we interviewed each of our guests for a pretty intensive interview before. And then we said, okay, so let's figure out what it is you're going to talk about. And we told them these are the questions we're going to ask, but we also warned them. But now, if we go off script, if we depart the text, can you roll with us? And to their credit, every one of our guests said, oh, you bring it. We got it. So I appreciate that, because the other thing is this is, and that's a little bit of chaos we created right there. But at the end of the day, we are in the midst of chaos. And so when I think about, I'll talk a little about how the story arc, how we figured this out. The thing is this, while I talked about season one being about in this moment, about dealing with what felt unprecedented, but in this moment, while others are reacting to chaos, what we know from having done this work for a while and having been in organizations helping them deal with chaos of a different flavor, when others are reacting to chaos, strategic organizations are actually using moments of chaos to build competitive advantage. And they're doing it through excellence, through workplace excellence, and they're doing it through people. It's about strategic foresight plus immediate action, because the thing is, they are doing something. They're not talking about it. They're not thinking about it. They're doing something with the knowledge that they have. Because reactive approaches generally fail, and they drain resources. If you think about it, you think about all the folks who, when the executive orders came through, had a reactive approach. Cough, cough, target. I mean, you saw what happened, right? So what I'm saying is, proactive workplace excellence is about creating competitive advantage. And there's strategic opportunity hidden in all this current disruption. That's the thing that makes us, I think, feel like, all right, this isn't fun, but there's opportunity here. So what we want to do with the podcast is create a framework for thinking strategically rather than defensively. And that is what our whole point about doing the what's next and what now is. And, we didn't do it by ourselves. We expanded our core team. And Khalil, tell us a little bit about that. What is it that we did in the background that I'm really thrilled that we did do? So we can, tout our folks who are helping us this time.
Yeah, absolutely. In addition to all of the folks that reached out and said, love the podcast, love what you're doing. How can I share? How can I contribute? How can I put this out into my network? When is season 2 coming out? There were also some folks that reached out and said, hey, love what you're doing. How can I participate? And so 4 folks that I just want to call out in alphabetical order. And, Janet, you've been giving these folks so much guidance, so much support. So Brandy Wheeler is joining and supporting our social media. You're going to see a lot more clips and content and resources and materials out there. Evan McFalls, who you may remember from last season, our technical guru who helps to make sure all of our materials are right and our platform is on point and the sound is ready to go and the lighting is good and all of that. Jamila Sherman is driving research and data integrity. So really making sure that as we're talking about trends, talking about data that's out there, that we've got the most up-to-date, most accurate information. And Jay Sharma, who is keeping us organized and on schedule and really kind of rallying the troops. And for anybody out there that has ever worked with Janet and I, you know that this is a Herculean task for these folks to keep us on track, in part because there's so much stuff going on and there's so much that we want to talk about and so much that you want us to talk about. So we want to make sure that we're keeping things tight, keeping things moving forward, and you're going to see episodes come out on a really regular schedule. So just an incredible team behind the scenes that is continuing to support this work. As the work gets bigger, as the podcast gets bigger, the team is getting bigger and better as well. So we're super excited about that.
When Evan, who was sort of very much a creative force behind helping us pull this together, when we came up with In This Moment, the issue, he said, let's call it In This Moment network. And while that doesn't roll off the tongue or the keyboard in terms of typing it in, one of the reasons that he said that was he said, I think it's bigger than the podcast. And we believe that too. But when it was just the 3 of us trying to pull this together and dealing with all the other things we have to deal with in the world, we believed that, but it was kind of hard to make it happen. Well, now, because we still believe that's important, that's why we have a team. And, it takes a village. It takes a team because behind the scenes, it can be a goat rodeo. And like I said, Khalil's easier to deal with than I am. I am a piece of work. But between the 2 of us, we can't manage ourselves. We need somebody else. So now we have this wonderful team. And what we're hoping is that it does end up being bigger than the podcast. So we're hoping we'll have but having guests, that expands it. By being able to build other content and things around it, that expands it. By making it possible for us to have a bigger conversation, not only among ourselves in this little world that we're building, but with everybody who's listening, that expands it. We couldn't do that if we didn't have a bunch of folks. It's not even a bunch of folks, but we have a small group of really incredible folks who are now engaged in helping us do this. So I am excited about what's possible. I feel sorry for them because every time we get excited, that means it's a whole bunch of work for somebody else. But, they have said they want to do this. They believe in it too. So I'm really excited about what we can do this season that we didn't do last season. Not to mention the fact that, we said it was a limited season last season. We're doubling the number of episodes that we did last season. It was 6 episodes. We're doubling that this session. So we are looking forward to a longer season, a bigger universe, and just more. And so what we want to do is we hope that you will engage with us, right? That's what we're hoping, right, Khalil?
Well, Jenna, as they say, go big or go home. And I don't think any of us have the appetite to go home. And to your point about engaging, you may not be ready to take on project management and research for the In This Moment podcast, but there are other ways to engage. So first and foremost, obviously, listen and watch everywhere you get your podcasts. Subscribe so you never miss an episode. Share with others whom you think would benefit from the content. Engage online with questions, comments, your insights and revelations, and provide us with feedback. We're always asking for what you want to hear, what you want to learn more about, how we can continue to engage and partner. And so we're just excited to be on this journey with you. And thank you so much for giving us your time as we dive into season 2 and as we bring all these amazing guests and all of this incredible behind the scenes support to this In This Moment conversation. Janet, you want to wrap us up?
I will. So you're seeing us now. In a week or so, you're going to see our first episode. I guess we're technically the first episode, but our first guest will be coming in a week or so. And so please Everything that we are in season 2 is the result of what we heard from you in season 1. Khalil and I don't just wanna do this for us because we get to sit around and eat barbecue and Brunswick stew and drink wine, all day and never get out of our little bubble. We want that bubble to be bigger because at the end of the day, all of us who are involved with this podcast and all of you who have taken the time to listen to it believe that there is something that you can do, something you can change, and that change is necessary and possible. So please help us do that. And we look forward to seeing you for season 2. And then after that, maybe season 3. So see you soon.
See you next week.
Thanks for joining us on In This Moment. Find today's resources at inthismoment.network and connect with us on LinkedIn. And if this was valuable, subscribe and review us on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever else you get your podcast. It helps other leaders find us. Stay ready for what's next.